You know, some mysteries from the ancient world, they just have a way of sticking with us. They're these incredible puzzles carved into stone and written on pages that we can't quite decipher. And today, we're going to lean in and listen a little closer.
I mean, you've got monuments like the massive stone heads on Easter Island, the Moai, just staring inland as if they're guarding some long-lost secret. And then you have things like the Piri Reis map from 1513, showing coastlines with a level of accuracy that just shouldn't have been possible back then.
And it's impossible to look at this stuff and not ask yourself, are we seeing the last faint whispers of a lost world? Like a whole chapter of human history that somehow got torn out of the book? But then, of course, there's the ultimate riddle, the final boss of ancient mysteries, the Voynich manuscript. We've carbon dated it to the early 1400s, and it's this book filled with an alphabet that appears nowhere else, illustrations of plants that don't exist, and star charts we don't recognize. And get this, no one, not the best cryptographers in the world, not linguists, not even modern AI, has been able to make any sense of it. So for hundreds of years, these mysteries have been the perfect fuel for some pretty wild theories. But what happens when the internet, our giant global hive mind, suddenly throws its hand up and says, "Hey, I've got it. I figured it out"? Well, that's what we're diving into today. Okay, so let's start with that eureka moment. You know, that electrifying claim that one of these ancient puzzles has finally been solved. And it really doesn't get more dramatic than this. A user on Reddit named Kaya_Divine posts on the Voynich subreddit with this absolute bombshell of a title. Here it goes for the first time public Voynich manuscript translation. So what did this 600-year-old unbreakable code finally reveal? Was it the location of a lost city, a forgotten history of mankind? Nope. It was an herbal recipe for the plant comfrey. At the waning of the moon, take the lower part of the plant and dry it. All of a sudden, this giant, impenetrable mystery felt, well, almost kind of normal. Now, this idea of a surprisingly simple solution to a massive mystery, it's not actually new. It reminds me a lot of another grand theory that came way before the internet. Professor Charles Hapgood came up with this ancient sea kings theory. He basically argued that a super advanced seafaring civilization existed way back during the Ice Age, and that all our ancient maps are just their hand-me-downs. And Hapgood's smoking gun? It was that Piri Reis map. Why? Because it seems to show the coast of Antarctica, but without the massive ice cap that's been sitting on it for thousands and thousands of years. The huge question was, how on earth could a 16th century mapmaker possibly know what that land looked like underneath all that ice? But here's the thing about extraordinary claims. They require extraordinary proof. And this is where we get to the other side of the story, the classic battle of science versus secret keys. Back on Reddit, the reaction was swift. The user claimed they had a secret VX 2025 Voynich working key, but the community immediately said, whoa, hold on. They didn't just want the answer, they wanted the method. Post the key, they said, not the translation. Let other people try it so your work can be verified. This isn't just people being difficult. This is the absolute heart of the scientific method, reproducibility. But then came the twist. The Redditor refused. They basically said, the translation is my copyrighted material, and the key is my trade secret. It took me a ton of work to figure this out, and I'm not just going to give it away for free. And right there, that's where the whole claim just hits a brick wall. And the community's response pretty much became the perfect, most concise summary of the entire scientific process. One user put it perfectly, "Trust me, bro, is not how science works." I mean, you really can't say it any better than that. And look, this isn't just about arguments on the internet. This demand for evidence, for a method that anybody can test and verify for themselves, that's exactly how we solve these mysteries in the real world. Just look at the Nazca lines in Peru. For decades, the popular theories were just wild. Alien airports was the big one. But then researchers did something so simple it was brilliant. They stopped looking at them from the sky and got down on the ground. They literally walked the lines, just like the people who made them did. And what did they find? Not an airport. They found a giant ceremonial labyrinth, a sacred place for walking and pilgrimage, not for spaceships. No secret key required, just slow, methodical, verifiable work. Okay, so this brings us to the big one, the lost world to end all lost worlds.
What about Atlantis?
Well, the scholarly consensus here is pretty rock solid, and it's summed up perfectly on the Ask Historians subreddit. Did Atlantis exist? The simple answer is no. It wasn't a real place. It was an allegorical parable, a story meant to teach a lesson about philosophy, kind of like Thomas More's Utopia. It was a thought experiment.
So, in other words, Plato wasn't trying to write a history textbook. He made up this story of this perfect city that gets corrupted by greed and is then destroyed by the gods as a way to talk about his own ideas on politics and what makes an ideal society. Atlantis wasn't history, it was a teaching tool.
So why? Why are we so completely obsessed with these stories? What is it about the big what if that captures our imagination so fiercely?
Well, these grand theories, whether it's a secret key to the Voynich manuscript or a lost super civilization from the Ice Age, they're exciting, let's be honest. They feel like finding a cheat code for history. They give us one single, dramatic, simple answer to questions that are actually incredibly complex and messy.
But the slow, patient, methodical work of real science, actually walking the Nazca lines, demanding to see the cryptographer's key, reading Plato's text for what it actually is, that offers something else. It might not be as flashy, but it gives us something way more valuable, verifiable truth, a solid foundation we can actually build our understanding on.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. When we're so busy searching for these lost worlds, are we really looking for ancient cities and secret codes, or is this whole endless search for what if actually a search to find a more exciting, more mysterious, and maybe even a grander version of ourselves?